Verse 33.
Okay, thank you. Pratapyan srustadhananjayoditam.
Could you start with the invocation, please? Om Namo Bhagavate.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Pratapyan srustadhananjayoditam. Nasham yadunam bhagavat gatim chatam. Ekantya bhaktya bhagavati yadoksaje. Niveshtitatmo paramama samshrita.
Kunti, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of the transcendental personality of Godhead with full attention and thus gained release from the course of material existence.
Yayaharat bhuvo bharam tam tanum vijaha kantakam kantakeneva dvayam kapishtuhu samam.
The Supreme Unborn Lord Sri Krishna caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller.
Yata matsyadi rupani tate jahyadhyata nataha ubharakshyapito yena jahau tatsha kalevaram.
The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others.
Yada mukundo bhagavani mahim jahau svatanyashnavaya satkataha tadahareva pratibuddha shetasam abhadrahetu karnavaratataha.
When the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, left this earthly planet in a self-same form, from that everyday Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge.
Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam bhuttaha pure saraste sigrahe tahatmani vibhavya lobhanta jima himasanadi hadharma chakram gamanaya paryadat.
Maharaj Yudhishthira was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence throughout the capital, state, home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home and he dressed accordingly.
Svarat pautram vinayinam atmanah shushamam gunahi toya nivyapatim bhumer abhyasinchad gajafyayet.
Thereafter, in the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned his grandson, who was trained and equally qualified, as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the seas.
Mathurayam tata vajram surasenapatim tataha prajapatyam nirupyestim agnin api parishvaraha.
Then he posted Vajra, the son of Anirudh, grandson of Lord Krishna, at Mathura as the king of Shushena. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhishthira performed the Prayagraj sacrifice and placed in himself the fire for quitting household life.
Vishrajya tatra tat sarvam dukulya valayadikam nirmamo nirahankaraha sanchinnasesha bandanaha.
Maharaj Yudhishthira at once relinquished all his garments, belt, and ornaments of the royal order and became completely disinterested and unattached to everything.
Vacham juhava manasi tat prana itare chatam mritavapanam sotsargam tam panchatve hayojavahit.
Then he amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, then the mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the five elements, and his body into death. Then, as pure self, he became free from the material conception of life.
त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वं तचैकितव्ये जहोन्मुनिः सर्वमात्मान्यजुहावेत् ब्रह्मण्यात्मनमव्यये.
Thus annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them into one science and then absorbed that science in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances.
शिरावासा निराहारो बद्धवान् मुक्तमूर्धचः दर्शयायानात्मनो रूपं चदोन्मत्तः पिशाचवः अनवेक्षामनो निरगात् अश्रुनावान् बधिरो यतः.
After that, Mahayudhishthira dressed himself in torn clothing, gave up eating all solid foods, voluntarily became dumb, and let his hair hang loose. All this combined made him look like an urchin or madman with no occupation. He did not depend on his brothers for anything, and just like a deaf man, he heard nothing.
उद्दिशीं प्रविवेशे सासं गतपूर्वं महात्मभिः हृदि ब्रह्म परं ध्यायन् नवातेत यतो गतः.
He then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men, to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he lived in that way wherever he went.
सर्वे तं मनुनिर्जग्मुर् भरताः कृता निश्चयाः कलेन धर्ममित्रेण दृष्टा स्पृष्टा प्रजा भुवि.
The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world, and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected by irreligious practice. Therefore, they decided to follow in the footsteps of their elder brother.
ते साधु कृत सर्वतः ज्ञात्वा त्यानिकमात्मनः मनसा धारयन्मासुर् वैकुण्ठ चरणाम्बुजम्.
They all had performed in the principles of religion, and as a result, rightly decided that the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption.
तत्तन्योद्रिकया भक्त्या विशुद्धदिशना परे तस्मिन् नारायणा परे एकान्तमतयो गतिम्. अवापुर्दुरवापां ते असद्भिर्विषयात्मभिः विधूतकल्मासस्तानां विरज्येनात्मनैव हि.
Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayan, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Golaka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life, but the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies.
विरुरोपि परित्राजाय प्रभासे देहमात्मनः कृष्णावेशेन तच्चितः पितृभिस्वाक्य संययौ.
Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhasa. Because he was absorbed in thought of Krishna, he was received by the descendants of the Pritaloka planet, where he returned to his original post.
द्रौपदी च तदाज्ञया पतिनामनपेक्षताम् वासुदेवे भगवती एकान्तमतिरापतम्.
Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husbands.
यश्रदैतद्भगवत्प्रियाणां पादोसुतानामिति सम्प्रयाणां शृणोति अलं स्वस्त्यं पवित्रं लब्ध्वा हरो भक्तिमुपैति सिद्धिम्.
The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu was the ultimate goal of life, back to Godhead, is fully auspicious and is perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration is with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life.
Thank you, Keshav Prabhu and Shrikar Prabhu for the wonderful recitations. As I think my hardware and firmware drivers, because of the security reasons, are getting upgraded towards the weekend. And that's the reason my camera is not going to work. So I sincerely apologize for that. Thank you everyone for attending. Today we are going to discuss verse number 36, 37, and 38 from 15th chapter of the first canto. So, Jyoti Mataji, am I allowed to share my screen? Yeah, I think so.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay. So I guess everyone can see the screen.
Yes, Prayagraj, we can
Yes,
see.
Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Palika Mataji. Why I can't see it? So let's start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Yam Pravrajandam Anupe Tamupeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahaka Tara Ajuava Putreti Tan Mayatayo Taravo Gnedustam Sarvabhutardayam Nimanatosmi. So let's start the 36th verse. Yada Mukundo Bhagavani Mahi Mahim Jahau Swatanva Shravaniya Satkataha Tadahareva Pratibuddha Chetasam Abhadra Hetuhu Kaliranva Varatata. So we won't do word by word translation because we have to cover 3 verses. When the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, left this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with poor fund of knowledge. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Ki joy. The influence of Kali can be enforced only upon those who are not fully developed in God consciousness. One can neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping oneself fully under the supreme care of the personality of Godhead. The age of Kali ensued just after the battle of Kurukshetra. It could not exert its influence because of the presence of the Lord. The Lord, however, left this earthly planet in his own transcendental body, and as soon as he left, the symptoms of the Kali Yuga, as were envisioned by Maharaj Yudhishthir prior to Arjuna's arrival from Dwarka, began to manifest, and Maharaj Yudhishthir rightly conjectured on the departure of the Lord from the earth. As we have already explained, the Lord left our sight just as when the sun sets, it is out of our sight. So let's go to the next verse. Yudhishtiras tat parisaparanam buddha pure chirashtre cha gruhe tathatmani vibhavya lobhanruta jim himsana dadat adharma chakram gamanaya paryadhat. Translation. Maharaj Yudhishthir was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence throughout the capital, state, home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home, and he dressed accordingly. Purport. The present age is influenced by the specific qualities of Kali. since the days of the Battle of Kurukshetra, about 5,000 years ago, the influence of the age of Kali began manifesting, and from authentic scriptures, it is learned that the age of Kali is still to run on for 427,000 years. The symptoms of the Kali Yuga, as mentioned above, namely avarice, falsehood, diplomacy, cheating, nepotism, violence, and all such things are already in vogue, and no one can imagine what is going to happen gradually with further increase of the influence of Kali till the day of annihilation. We have already come to know that the influence of the age of Kali is meant for godless so-called civilized man. Those who are under the protection of the Lord have nothing to fear from this horrible age. Maharaj Yudhishthir was a great devotee of the Lord, and there was no necessity of his being afraid of the age of Kali, but he preferred to retire from active household life and prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. The Pandavas are eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore they are more interested in the company of the Lord than anything else. Besides that, being an ideal king, Maharaj Yudhishthir wanted to retire just to set an example for others. As soon as there is some young fellow to look after the household affairs, one should at once retire from family life to uplift oneself to spiritual realization. One should not rot in the dark well of household life till one is dragged out by the will of Yamaraj. Modern politicians should take lessons from Maharaj Yudhishthir about voluntary retirement from active life and should make room for the younger generations. Also, retired old gentlemen should take lessons from him and leave home for spiritual realization before being forcefully dragged away to meet death. So we'll go to the 38th verse. Swaratapautram viniyanam atmanaha susamam gunaihi toyanivyapatim bhumer abhyashchin gajanvaye. Thereafter, in the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned his grandson, who was trained and equally qualified as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the sea. Purport. The total land on the earth bordered by the seas was under the subjugation of the king of Hastinapur. Maharaj Yudhishthir trained his grandson, Maharaj Parikshit, who was equally qualified in state administration in terms of the king's obligation to the citizens. Thus, Parikshit was enthroned on the seat of Maharaj Yudhishthir prior to his departure back to Godhead. Concerning Maharaj Parikshit, the specific word used, Vinayinam, is significant. Why was the king of Hastinapur, at least till the time of Maharaj Parikshit, accepted as the emperor of the world? The only reason is that the people of the world were happy because of good administration of the emperor. The happiness of the citizens was due to the ample production of natural produce, such as grains, fruits, milk, herbs, valuable stones, minerals, and everything that the people needed. They were even free from all bodily miseries, anxieties of mind, and disturbances caused by natural phenomena and other living beings. Because everyone was happy in all respects, there was no resentment, although there were sometimes battles between the state kings for political reasons and supremacy. Everyone was trained to attain the highest goal of life, and therefore the people were also enlightened enough not to quarrel over trivialities. The influence of the age of Kali gradually infiltrated the good qualities of both the kings and the citizens, and therefore a tense situation developed between the ruler and the ruled. But still, even in this age of disparity between the ruler and the ruled, there can be spiritual emolument and God consciousness. That is a special prerogative. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, yes. Okay. So we'll start the Mangala Charana and then we'll start our discussions. Om Adnyantimirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sa Advaitam Sa Avadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaurav Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Yantah Pravishya Mama Janmam Prasuptam Sanjeevayatya Akhila Shaktidhara Svadhamna Anyamscha Hastacharana Shravanat Pagadin Pranan Namo Bhagavati Purushaya Dukhyam. This meeting is okay. So I can't see the participants. I don't know why. So now, Lord, we have come to the section where Lord has left the planet, and Yudhishthira Maharaj, after asking so many questions apart from Lord's departure, finally Arjun started explaining what happened, and then in his narration, Maharaj Yudhishthira realized that it was time for the retirement. And as we went through the purport, Prabhupada here is giving a lot of lessons to us. We, the people who follow the Vaishnava Sampradaya, we prefer not to discuss the Lord's pastimes when he leaves this world. And it's for a valid reason, that it gives us that mood of separation, that moroseness, that and that's the reason remembering his pastimes and his Leela is more relishing than discussing the pastimes of Lord's disappearance. So another reason for that is the influence of Kali. The Kali Yuga begins whenever Lord leaves. Actually, as we have gone through the chaos or the mayhem caused by Ashwatthama, and that time itself, when the degradation of Brahmanas started, misusing of the Brahminical power, and that's where the Kali Yuga started manifesting. But people on this planet, on Earth, did not get the feel of that, the symptoms of Kali Yuga, because of the Lord's presence here. So as soon as he left, as we have seen, the bad omens, Yudhishthira Maharaj started looking at those, and he realized that now it's time for the Lord has started ending his pastimes on this earth. And so in this particular context, Srila Bhakticharu Maharaj has given a very, very instructive lecture about this section. And he says that everything is upside down in Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada has given a very beautiful details on, he has given lectures on this section as well. And in the 38th verse, we'll come to that. He has given a very interesting comment about the present day situation and how these great personalities, how they see the Kali Yuga and how they see the negative side of the Kali Yuga and how they see the positive side of the Kali Yuga as well in terms of the taking the path of Krishna consciousness. So we'll come to that. So what are the symptoms of Kali Yuga? There are two verses which are specifically describing how Kali Yuga is, and one of that we have already discussed earlier, is Mandaha Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Yupatrata. So that's where Suta Goswami says that people of this age are very hypocritic, they have a tendency to quarrel over very, very small petty things. They are dull-headed. Sumanda Matayo, Mati means buddhi, and Manda means very dull. Manda Bhagya, their fate is also not very good. It is also dull. The fortune, or if we look at the horoscope of the people from Dwapar Yuga or from Treta Yuga, from Satya Yuga, and then compare it with Kali Yuga, our fortune or our horoscope is probably worse than the animal kingdom in the Satya Yuga, because of the association of great personalities in the Satya Yuga. Obviously, Satya Yuga is the beginning of this cycle, and the living entities in Satya Yuga are very pure. They're not 100% pure because they're in touch with the material nature, but the level of purity is very high, very, very high, very pure. And that's the reason they can simply meditate on the form of the Lord initially, as Dhruva Maharaj did on the form of the Lord as Paramatma, and then the Lord appears, and then just by meditating on the form of the Lord, his pranava mantra, Om, and other mantra in the lineage, whatever they follow, they can simply go back to Godhead. Then the contamination starts in the Treta Yuga, and in Treta Yuga, people have a tendency to quarrel. The little bit of imperfection people can see in Treta Yuga, all the propensities of this human body. And at that time, in Treta Yuga, the actual Vedic knowledge gets expanded, and people start following the rituals properly, and they chant certain mantras, and that's how the worship, the standard of worship changes. A lot of things change in Treta Yuga, but still the level of purity is very high. As we can see, people follow austerities. The example is in Ramayana. Ravan was in Treta Yuga, but the austerities he performed was phenomenal. Bali, the austerities he performed were exceptional. and there are many other personalities there. So in after Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga starts, and in Dwapar Yuga, it is the age of sacrifice, deity worship, and that is why all the sacrificial fires and standards of deity worship come, and then there are a lot of rules and regulations of moral code of conduct changes, because that has to be set by the Lord in Dwapar Yuga. End of Dwapar Yuga, Lord appeared here, and then because of that, the situation was under control, as we can see here in the purport of Srila Prabhupada, because of the presence of Lord. But it could not exert its influence because of the presence of Lord. And then the Kali Yuga starts, and the second verse in the 12th canto, Shukdev Goswami gives the description of Kali Yuga. He says that Prayena alpa yusha sarve kalavasmin yuge janaha. Oh, that's the first verse. Sorry, that's the verse in the first canto by Sutta Goswami. Let me remember the verse from Shukdev Goswami. Give me 1 second. We'll discuss that. If I remember it, we'll talk about that verse. Sorry, I can hear. Hare Krishna. That verse is Shukdev Goswami.
You are on mute, Prabhu.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was muted. Okay. So, let's start. I'm not able to remember the verse from the 12th canto. We'll talk about that a little later. So here Prabhupada gives another very important lesson. As we have already explained, the Lord left our sight just as when the sun sets, it is out of our sight. So a lot of people or certain philosophers, in their opinion, the concept of God is they bring it to at a very human level. And naturally, because of that, the potency of the Lord, the potency and the potent, that main principle, what confirms that Lord is a personality, the eternal person, Purusham Shashwatam Divyam, that gets sidelined. Because if the God does not have potency, that means coming to this earth, which is the verse coming to the earth in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we talk about Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. So coming to this earth is because of his potency. So that means if coming here is because of the potency, ending his pastimes and going out of our sight is also because of his potency. And that is the base principle which we need to understand. And then Lord talks about the verse, why he comes here. परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. And we can see that Lord did that dharma samsthapanarthaya, and then he does that after millennium, yuge yuge. And then another important verse is Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vekti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mameti sorjuna. If we bring the Lord's pastimes at our mundane logical level, naturally we will never be able to understand what is his appearance and karma, his pastimes, and divya, and his leaving this planet Earth as well, and his being out of our sight. That we will not be able to understand. And naturally, what is the result? The promise given by the Lord will not be applicable to that person who is trying to understand or analyze the Lord's pastimes in terms of the logic. Tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mameti sorjuna. So the person who accepts and understands the pastimes of the Lord, janma karma chame divyam, that person, when he leaves this material world, tyaktva deham punarjanma, so no birth, that means no death, and that means no disease and no old age. Very important principle we need to understand here. Of course, we devotees, as Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj was telling in his lecture, that because of that logical ideas, he said that everything is upside down, and he said that very, very humorously, he says, in the in earlier ages, people used to travel on horses, on elephants, and all. So now he said that horses travel in the car, in their carriage. Means we have to. You can see so many small trucks and vehicles where this horse inside. So that means horse, who is supposed to carry the people, who is the mode of transport, who is the God-given mode of transport. Now people, Bhakti Charu Maharaj says that now people burn the garbage from the desert. He said that taking birth in the desert is a very sinful birth. But now people think that they migrate there because of that money which is coming there by selling the garbage, which is the oil actually. So then he said, in the earlier ages, the lamp, the wick was up and the lamp was down. If we see now, the wick is down and the lamp is up. It's all upside down. And he gives very beautiful examples of how this age is. And we are using our logic for that. And we can see so many problems we are coming across, that pollution, greenhouse, and you name it. We have, the list is endless. So the potency of the Lord we were talking about is, Prabhupada gives the example of sun, that how the potency of the Lord is beyond our understanding, and why we should be accepting the Leela, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, as it is. Because he gives the example of sun. Now, the sun is far away, means how much? 2.98 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second is the speed of the ray of light, sunlight. Now, into the 365 days equivalent time, that is the distance between Earth and the sun, right? And still we can feel the heat from the sun, and we can see that in last few days the temperature is going up. That is because of sun, but can we see that can we say that the light and the heat of the sun is sun? Prabhupada says no. Sun is different, but at the same time, the potency, the heat and the light we receive. So in the same manner, if the Lord is there, that means this world is working because of his potencies. And I think it's a very logical example or the analogy Prabhupada gives, and then comes to the point of why we should be accepting the Lord as a personality and his potencies. I found that example incredibly convincing and very fascinating analysis by Prabhupada and our acharyas. So, in this, and then Bhakti Maharaj was saying that the symptoms of Kali Yuga, as time is progressing, we can see that in my childhood as well, and I think Palika Mataji can shed some more light, because she has seen a lot more from the Holy Land of Bengal as well as here, that in my childhood, intoxication was considered to be a bit something really disgusting. People used to look down, and that was considered something really, really wrong in India and in America as well. Some maybe a century back, intoxication was banned, and we know some of us, we know the story of that famous bootlegger who made a fortune, and I think the Kennedy family also made a fortune by doing this bootlegging, by selling the alcohol. So this is but now this is very common. Selling the alcohol is very common, and then if somebody is not doing any intoxication, or we say if ISKCON devotee, and then person asks you, how can you enjoy? Means the whole concept of enjoyment is so degraded. In the same way, all other gambling and meat eating and illicit relationships, now people don't see that as something wrong, which is serious degradation. And it's just 5,000 years, as Prabhupada said in one of the translations we went through, 427,000 years left. So we can imagine another 100 years, how bad it is going to be, and how the depletion of the resources will continue. So, the verse of Lord's, we are coming back to the Lord's potency, that the verse from the Bhagavad Gita where Lord confirms that, let's go to that verse. So it is 9.4. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani naham teshu avastitaha. Let's go to that verse. It's 9.4. And here it is. Yeah. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagad vyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani nachaham teshu avastitaha. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And that's where, in this particular purport, Prabhupada gives the actual process as well and the reasoning behind how we should be following the understanding of the basic principle of Lord's supremacy. So obviously the verse he gives is Atah Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhavedgayam Indriyayam Sevan Mukhehi Jugvado Swayam Eva Spurat Yadaha from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and where what we should be following on. So I thought this is a very relevant verse for the topic we are discussing now. So let's go to the next verse, otherwise we will be discussing this verse only. So here, Maharaj Yudhishthir was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, because he is Dharmaraj. He knows what is the perfection of the religious principles. And irreligion, what is irreligion and what is religion, who else can understand? Because he is none other than the expansion of Yamaraj himself, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence throughout the capital state home and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home and dressed accordingly. So, as we have read here that the retirement part is, timely retirement is so essential that our movement talks about renunciation and detachment. And the example of detachment we can see throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Yudhishthir and all other great personalities, how they became detached. For example, Bhishma Dev, when the time came, he was always detached, but his prayer and his desire was that he wanted to see the chivalrous form of the Lord. And when Lord charged him with that wheel of the broken chariot, and Bhishmadev was so satisfied, and he said, "That's it. I have seen the ultimate form of the Lord which I desired, and he has fulfilled my desire. And now it's time for me to stop fighting." And that's how he just Arjuna started. He made a Sharapanjari, and then Bhishmadev was on the Sharapanjari. We know rest of the pastimes. All the advice he has given to Maharaj Yudhishthir, Bhishmadev, that's the amazing pastime. And that's another example of perfect renunciation. How a devotee should be. This particular verse talks about how responsible the king should be. As we have seen that every varna has certain duties. So Brahman cannot get influenced by this, should not get influenced by the symptoms of the age of Kali, because Brahmana's job is yajan, pathan, pratigraha, and dan. So if we see these 6 activities Brahman is supposed to perform, because of that purity, the influence of Kali won't be there. Yajan, pathan. That means what? Performing the sacrifice and facilitating the citizens to perform the sacrifice. That is the job. These are the first 2 responsibilities of Brahman. Second, pathan. Brahman is supposed to learn the Vedic scriptures, as I think we have discussed several times. First, when the Brahman gets when the person gets the eligibility, the acceptance by the spiritual master, and when they get the initiation from the spiritual master, that is Dvija. That means the person is twice born. Dvija then becomes Vipra. How? By following the scriptures, by thoroughly studying the scriptures. So that is Vipra. When that knowledge is there, but still it is not practical, and then Brahman is supposed to perform the austerities, the penances, and realize that knowledge. And then Brahma Janati iti Brahmanyam. And that person becomes Brahman. So that is the pathan. So he has learned the scriptures. Now he is supposed to teach what he has learned. And that is pathan. Now, pathan. Pratigraha. Now, because of the immense austerities, there is a Brahmatej. The Brahmana was supposed to be very effulgent. And naturally, because of the austerities and the penances they perform, they automatically get a lot of power, a lot of siddhi. And that Brahman, because of the siddhi, there is a very high possibility that they will become proud. For example, if the Brahman says, because the Brahman has vacha siddhi, and if for some reason, if the king or some very aristocratic person does not behave properly, and if they start blaspheming the devotees and the Lord's paraphernalia, the Brahman can get upset. And if they curse, things can go seriously wrong. Whatever that Brahman speaks, it will happen. If they say that you're supposed to die, the person will die. And as we have seen, the Shringi, the son of Shamik Rishi, he said, and that's how the Maharaj Parikshit got the curse. We all know the story. So because of that, Brahman is supposed to beg the alms, to develop that humility, constantly realize that, yes, I have just received this mercy from the Lord. And that is why Prati Agraha, across the boundary, when somebody, whomever is standing in front of that person, Agraha, please give me something to sustain my life. So only whatever is required for that day, Brahman is supposed to beg. And if you get more than what is needed for that day, the Brahman is supposed to give that as a dhan, to donate it to others. So that is the qualification of Brahman. That is the duty of Brahman. Similarly, the Kshatriya's duty was what? Because the kingdom is God's kingdom. It is given by the Supreme Lord as a responsibility. And obviously with responsibility, the Kshatriyas have the power as well. Who are the advisors? The Brahmans are the advisors. So according to the advisory council of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas are supposed to rule. Kshatrayateti were supposed to protect and administer the kingdom. Naturally, Brahman cannot be part of that opulence. They're supposed to stay outside of the kingdom or stay away from the opulences. And Kshatriyas are supposed to rule, and they can live that lavish life. Naturally, because it's a responsibility, and someday you have to give the responsibility to somebody else. And that's the job of administrator, to make sure that someone, the successor, will be there who is equally qualified to rule the kingdom. And that's what Maharaj Yudhishthir has done here. That as the time came, Maharaj Yudhishthir handed over the kingdom to the young Maharaj Parikshit, who was equally qualified and trained as Maharaj Yudhishthir. And as we can see here, Maharaj Yudhishthir wanted to retire just to set an example for others. So timely retirement. When I was doing my post-graduation, one of our professors, he was a very, very learned scholar. And he said that now you are going to finish your post-graduation very soon. And he was a dean of the university as well. So he said, one important principle I am going to tell you, that you all should know where to stop. And if you miss that part, you are going to face the consequences. You may not realize that even if you go up in the ladder, but you should know where to stop. Because later, either you will not know how to come down, or you will fall. And such a simple principle he gave. And where that wisdom came from, it comes from our scriptures. professor is supposed to give the advice to the students, not only for the material science, but for the ethical moral standards as well. And we can see here, Maharaj Yudhishthir had perfect understanding of when to retire. As Prabhupada says that modern politicians should take lessons from Maharaj Yudhishthir about voluntary retirement from active life and should make room for the younger generations. Also, retired old gentlemen should take lessons from him and leave home for spiritual realization before being forcefully dragged away to meet death. Very important principle. So we will come to the last verse for today. And in this particular purport, in the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned his grandson. We just talked about it a few minutes back, who was trained and equally qualified as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the seas. So he was the emperor of the world, and so was Maharaj Parikshit. So concerning Maharaj Parikshit, the specific word used, Vinayinam, is significant. Vinaya means humility. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavyastani Shunichaiva Shopakecha Pandita Samadarshinaha. So the person who understands that everything is God's property, that is naturally humble. That person is naturally humble, and that is very significant. So he knew that Maharaj Parikshit had a perfect understanding that he is just following the responsibility, and that's the reason when he received when he had the curse, he just accepted that at Lord's will, and that's how we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam here. So the only reason, as Prabhupada says here, is that the people of the world were very happy because of good administration of the emperor. If the emperor, for example, some of the emperors or some of the kings, we have seen that, and even today, some of the quote-unquote kings, they live incredibly lavish life. And they have that idea of discrimination that my people should live in a good, comfortable life, and others, they are our servants. They are my slaves. So that is the wrong mentality of the king. King's responsibility is to look after each and every living entity, each and every citizen of the king. And that's what Prabhupada is giving here. The only reason is that the people of the world were happy because of the good administration of the emperor. The happiness of the citizens was due to the ample production of natural produce such as grains, fruits, milk, herbs, valuable stones, minerals, and everything that people needed. So in 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when we will start reading the pastimes of Prithu Maharaj, because he was such a perfect ruler, earth was giving abundant grains, fruits, milk, herbs, all the necessities. And naturally, the precious metals, valuable stones, minerals, everything. When the earth is happy, when we respectfully worship the earth, because she is none other than consort of the Varahadev. So right now we are in Kali Yuga. Another symptom is we are exploiting the resources of the earth and very disrespectful towards earth. And as we can see here, why there are so many miseries now in the Kali Yuga, they were even free from all bodily miseries, anxieties of mind, and disturbances caused by natural phenomena and other living beings. So because there is no respect to other living entities, what does that mean? there are so many slaughterhouses and gross misuse of natural resources. And naturally, there is a lot of karmic reactions. And that's the reason we have all this bodily miseries and anxieties of mind and disturbances caused by natural phenomena and other living beings. And we all know that. And then Prabhupada says, because everyone was happy in all respects, there was no resentment, although there were some battles between the state kings for political reasons and supremacy. And in the reason for the battle and why Kshatriya is supposed to fight the battle when they are challenged, that we have elaborately discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. So here, when person knows the prescribed duties properly, that means the person is in a Varnashram dharma system. And that means everyone was trained to attain the highest goal of life. And therefore, the people were also enlightened enough not to quarrel over trivialities. The influence of the age of Kali gradually infiltrated the good qualities of both the kings and the citizens, and infiltrated the good qualities of both the kings and the citizens, and therefore a tense situation developed between the ruler and the ruled. And as we can see today, the governments and the people, is there a harmony? Definitely not. Means most of the times we keep complaining, I have to pay this much tax, but what I am getting in return, and the facilities given by the governments are really bad, and many other things. So, and it is happening all over the world. Some countries have more resources, so they can provide a little bit of better facilities. But overall, we can see this situation is almost everywhere. Now, we saw that this is all because of the Kali Yuga. So what are all the good, what is the good side or the positive side of Kali Yuga? Because I have been talking for quite some time now. I would like to hear others' voice. So what is the positive side, good qualities of Kali Yuga? Who can?
Hare Krishna movement.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada's appearance in Hare Krishna movement. This is
Wonderful.
the best.
Yes. Definitely. Yes, thank you. Any other, Mataji? Something, it is really encouraging. In Kali Yuga, if we just think of some offense, but if we don't commit it, we don't get the karmic reaction. If we can refrain from committing offenses, even if we get that thought in our mind, we don't get the sinful reactions. We don't get the bad karmic reactions of that, which is the positive side of Kali Yuga. And but on the other hand, if we just think of doing something good to others, we still get the benefit of that, because we are developing that aptitude and attitude for pious credits, for Ajnata Sukriti. So that is one of the advantage, that these are two advantages of Kali Yuga. Other advantage of Kali Yuga, the positive side of it is, I think Bhakticharu Maharaj was talking about this, and even Prabhupada has briefly discussed this earlier. They were saying that in Satya Yuga, the amount of austerities human being has to perform, those were phenomenal. And obviously those were qualified personalities, so they did. In Treta Yuga, the purity went down a little bit, and still it's like the PhD exam or the master's exam is quite tough. Bachelor's exam, the papers, the university exams is little bit less tough. Then higher secondary school exam is even less tough. And then preliminary exam for the kids whose brain is not very developed. For them, the paper is very easy. The exam is very easy. So we are those Mandaha Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Yuputrita. We are those kids. So for us, the exam is not tough. What? To chant the holy name, to associate with devotees, to follow the four regulative principles, refrains as much as possible, refrains from sense gratification. Because in Kali Yuga, it is not very easy to understand the importance of pure devotional service so easily. So obviously there are certain discounts as well. Yes, now some of the discounts is you can have a belly full of prasadam. That is one of the allowed sense gratification for us. And so we are fairly discounted type of living entities in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And that's the reason Bhakti Charu Maharaj was saying that we should take this process of Krishna consciousness very seriously. And he said that ISKCON devotees or the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya devotees or the Vaishnava Sampradaya devotees are a very, very special personality. So being respectful to each other, associating with the devotees, and doing Sankirtan, congregational chanting, japa in the association of devotees, and we know all the so many principles we should be following for the on the path of bhakti. So that's what we are supposed to follow. And Prabhupada was saying that, the humorous part, that in this age, in here, Gajanvaye, in the capital of Hastinapur, Gaja means elephant, Hasti means the elephant. So we can see Gokul means there were a lot of cows in the in Vrindavan, and Kul means yes, it's the land where we will find a lot of cows there. In the same way, there were a lot of elephants in the capital in Hastinapur. And Prabhupada was saying that today, in this age, if we give someone, okay, I have a couple of elephants, you can have it. And person will say, sorry, I can't manage this. But earlier, giving hundreds of cows and elephants and horses, the people had that capacity to maintain them properly. And that is, and here we can see in this age now, to maintain a good quality car is not easy for us. So if somebody gives us 10 horses, we don't have that capacity. So if we are saying that we are getting advanced in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, that is a big illusion. And Prabhupada says, what we have is a small box made of tin to take us from one place to another. Only thing is, the person sitting inside that tin box called car should be sensible enough to drive. But here, if somebody is sitting on the horse will not have accident with another horse because the horse understands it's an intelligent animal. Such a brilliant perspective Prabhupada has given here, that how the degradation is happening in this age of Kali Yuga, and we think that we are progressing. So that's what I found the whole analysis of this age of Kali Yuga by our acharyas and Prabhupada really, really fascinating. If you obviously Prabhupada had exceptional sense of humor, so when he says something that nobody can maintain now horses or elephant or number of cows, that is not possible, and so they are condemned now. So that his statements themselves have a profound depth, but at the same time there is a good sense of humor as well. He says that formerly they were maintaining those all animals. Instead of keeping a big car, they used to keep 2-3 elephants, number of horses, number of cows, and this is domestic animal. They are domestic animals. They used to be maintained, but nowadays they cannot. But during Maharaj Yudhishthir's time, or before that, the city was so full of elephants that it is named after elephant. Hastinapura means many elephants. And he said that still in India, in big procession, in some marriage ceremonies and all, we can see elephants and horses. Of course, that is going down day by day. Especially the royal families used to do that. But these things are now gone. So that's Hastinapur. Prabhupada says that it is motor car pura, because we can see loads of tin boxes. That's what he says. So yeah, I think it's almost 9 o'clock. We will stop here, or I will stop. Are there any questions or comments or any? Yeah. No questions, no comments, or no additions here? Okay. If there are no questions or comments, we will stop here. Thank you very much for having this discussion, and we could go through some of the interesting learning points from these 3 verses. So thank you. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaः. Anantakoti Vaishnava.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wonderful class. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.